Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
The Commons Speaker John Bercow has made a strong condemnation of President Trump in the Commons and said he would not want him to address Parliament.
As far as this place is concerned, I feel very strongly that our opposition to racism and to sexism and our support for equality before the law and an independent judiciary are hugely important considerations in the House of Commons.
John Bercow there. Well, let's get some reaction now from our chief political correspondent, Vicky Young, who's in Westminster. Vicky, just how unusual is it for a speaker to be so outspoken?
It's incredibly significant, not least because John Bercow is one of just 3 people who can decide who has this honour bestowed upon them. In the past, President Obama, Pope Benedict, Nelson Mandela have all come here and addressed both Houses of Parliament, but effectively the Speaker today has vetoed that idea. And as you say, it's the language that is used. There's been growing opposition. We've seen demonstrations in some cities against a state visit by Donald Trump, but also here in this place. And John Bercow saying effectively the President has racist and sexist views and is not fit to come here, and contrast that with Downing Street's approach, with Theresa May's approach, trying to forge a close relationship with the new president. Just an hour before John Bercow intervened, Theresa May in the House of Commons said we should engage patiently and constructively with the Trump administration. Now, John Bercow was applauded by some on the opposition benches who feel that he's standing up for the values of this place, but one Tory MP just said to me he's completely overstepped the mark.
Vicky, thank you. Meanwhile, in America, some of its biggest companies have joined the opposition to President Trump's controversial travel ban on people from 7 mainly Muslim countries. Almost 100 firms, including Apple, Google and Facebook, have filed legal papers arguing it would inflict significant harm on their businesses. Their action follows a flurry of legal activity over the weekend, which means the ban is, for the moment, suspended. Our North America correspondent Nick Bryant reports.
In a country as deeply divided as America, even patriotic songs aren't as unifying as they seem.
Stand beside her.
Lady Gaga kicked off her Super Bowl halftime show last night with God Bless America, written by a Jewish immigrant, and another song often heard at protests in the 1960s. She didn't make an explicit political statement, but was this high-profile Hillary Clinton supporter sending a message to Donald Trump?
One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome to America. You don't want it here. Go back home.
Even the adverts last night seemed loaded. This pro-immigration message from the brewers of Budweiser depicted the arrival of one of the company's founders from Germany. It's prompted calls for a boycott from some Trump supporters.
This is the beer we drink.
The pre-game entertainment came from an interview with the president and what's seen by members of his own party as a spectacular own goal.
Do you respect Putin?
I do respect him.
Do you? Why?
Well, I respect a lot of people, but that doesn't mean I'm going to get along with them.
Putin's a killer.
A lot of killers. We get a lot of killers. Why, you think our country's so innocent?
That statement has caused ructions in Washington, with senior Republicans rejecting the notion there's moral equivalence between America and Russia.
Putin's a former KGB agent. He's a thug. The Russians annexed Crimea, invaded Ukraine, and messed around in our elections. No, I don't think there's any equivalency between the way the Russians that conduct themselves and the way the United States does.
And the Kremlin has also weighed in, complaining about the question characterizing the Russian president as a killer. All this as immigrants from the mainly Muslim countries hit by the travel ban continue to enter America, knowing that the door opened by the legal challenge to the executive order could soon be closed if appeals judges side with the president. The appeal will be heard in San Francisco, but as with most of the great legal showdowns in America, the case will likely come to the Supreme Court. And the question in dispute has huge ramifications. Just how much power does the president have in deciding who comes to this country? Nick Bryant, BBC News, Washington.
Now, the Common Speaker, John Bercow, has joined the chorus of criticism of President Trump over his migrants' travel ban. He told MPs that he opposed any presidential address to Parliament during Mr. Trump's planned state visit later this year. Our political editor, Gary Gibbon, has this.
5 years ago, the trumpets sounded a welcoming fanfare in Westminster Hall for the US president, just as they did in Parliament's Royal Gallery in 1982 for President Reagan. Today, the Speaker, who by convention signs the formal invitation to address both houses of Parliament, said President Trump wasn't welcome here.
Before the imposition of the migrant ban, I would myself have been strongly opposed to an address by President Trump in Westminster Hall. After the imposition of the migrant ban by President Trump, I am even more strongly opposed to an address by President Trump in Westminster Hall. As far as this place is concerned, I feel very strongly that our opposition to racism and to sexism and our support for equality before the law and an independent judiciary are hugely important considerations in the House of Commons.
All the SNP MPs applauded. Quite a few Labour MPs joined in.
2 words, well done.
Some Tory MPs were angered by the Speaker wading in on an invitation only recently issued by the Queen via the Prime Minister. But even some who regularly criticise the Speaker for chasing headlines forgave him this.
You actually like what he said this time, even though you've been a critic for years.
Yes, indeed, because he is saying what I also think.
Now that is very revealing, isn't it? He's overstepped the mark, but in your direction, so that's fine.
No, I don't think he's overstepped the mark because he's the Speaker of the House of Commons.
I have today been able to convey Her Majesty the Queen's hope that President Trump and the First Lady would pay a state visit to the United Kingdom later this year, and I'm delighted that the President has accepted that invitation.
Before Theresa May got to Washington, one friend of President Trump said Number 10 had already sounded him out to see if the President would expect or like to address Parliament on his trip. The source told Number 10 it probably wasn't the President's sort of thing. Tonight, Number 10 said the state visit plans were still being worked on. But now one possible excursion has been crossed off the list.
Well, the Trump administration is to return to court later to seek reinstatement of its ban on travellers from 7 mainly Muslim countries. The restrictions had been lifted by judges at the weekend, and some families have managed to fly into the US today. Within the last hour, the president has been talking to military leaders at US Central Command in Florida. This is what he's had to say.
And all across Europe, you've seen what happened in Paris and Nice. All over Europe, it's happening. It's gotten to a point where it's not even being reported. And in many cases, the very, very dishonest press doesn't want to report it. They have their reasons, and you understand that. So today we deliver a message in one very unified voice to these forces of death and destruction. America and its allies will defeat you. We will defeat them.
Well, our international editor, Lindsay Hilson, is in Washington. What do you make of that? What are the facts?
Well, it's not true. European journalists and American journalists, of course, always cover terror attacks in Europe. And I think the impression he's trying to give is that Europe is this sort of dystopian land of terror and horror, which Europeans know is not, in fact, the case. But there's a reason for that. It's because he's trying to say that this travel ban, which excludes people from 7 Muslim majority countries that all Syrian refugees, is about protecting America from terror, protecting America from what Europe has, because of course Europe, there are a lot of refugees and immigrants in Europe. And he made this address to, I would say, a predominantly sympathetic audience, the military, because he's saying to the military, we're going to build you up, we're going to make you, give you all the equipment you want. That's one of his campaign promises. He has been stopped by judges. A federal judge has said that this travel ban, is not constitutional, and it has been temporarily stopped. Now that case now goes to an appeals court, and both sides, the federal judge and the government side, will make their arguments, and that judgment could be made as soon as tomorrow. In the meantime, immigrants from the 7 countries and refugees are coming into America as fast as they can.
Lindsay Hilson.
Amongst those who hope that the window of opportunity to enter the United States will stay open are the Yazidis, who, having fled Islamic State militants, are waiting in Iraqi refugee camps in the hope of being allowed asylum in the United States. They're victims of terrorism, but were banned by President Trump's broad travel ban that encompasses those 7 mainly Muslim countries and is meant to safeguard Americans from terrorism. Our Foreign Affairs correspondent Jonathan Rugman has been talking to some of them.
In the refugee camps of northern Iraq live the survivors of the 21st century's first attempted genocide. Over 200,000 members of the Yazidi sect have been eking out an existence here for over 2 years, ever since they escaped the kidnap, murder and sexual slavery of so-called Islamic State. So to them, news of Donald Trump's fight to keep a 90-day ban on all Iraqis reaching America merely adds insult to a world of unimaginable injury. Yazidis like the Hassan family, who fled for their lives in August 2014, so desperate to escape this camp that 11 relatives drowned when their boat capsized trying to reach Europe.
They left the camp to go to Turkey, looking for a new life in Europe. One of my brothers and his children drowned. It was December the 9th, 2015. We only got 3 bodies back.
Anwar shows me a picture of the only 3 graves they have, and then a photo of another of her brothers, Faisal. He lives in Lincoln, Nebraska. The family has approval from US immigration to join him there. Now they're not so sure the visas will arrive.
I heard that President Trump wanted to delay things for 3 or 4 months.
What do you think of Donald Trump's decision?
I think he's crazy.
So these are your bags? Yeah. The family has its luggage packed, all ready to go. They say they stopped taking English lessons, though, when the White House ban on 7 mainly Islamic countries first came into force.
I have 3 brothers and 2 sisters.
Last night I spoke to Faisal Hassan in Nebraska, waiting for the US government to give his family the green light to fly. He's been working on the tills in a Walmart supermarket for the past year, and he insists the Hassans are no threat.
Have you ever heard like one of the Yazidi blow up himself or kill someone?
No.
That's why I'm saying my family is not threatened for America. I want for them a better life.
In Nebraska?
They deserve a better life.
Those Yazidis applying to resettle in America feel powerless in the face of distant court battles, either to let them in or to keep them out. But what makes them angry is Donald Trump's claim that he's trying to keep America safe from jihadist terror, when there have been no greater victims of that terror than the Yazidis themselves. In 2014, I witnessed the Yazidi exodus as an estimated 150,000 people fled up a mountain to escape IS. Hundreds of them died of heat or starvation, most of them children. The Naif family survived that journey, and they were expected to leave for America last week. Then another phone call told them to stay put until the legal situation becomes clearer.
It was very hard when we got the call, because the journey is our way out, away from death, and then it was cancelled.
He speaks of death because two of his brothers worked as US Army translators. One was killed by jihadists, and the other has already been given sanctuary in America. So staying is, they say, not an option.
We received death threats as they worked for the Americans. The fundamentalists look on us as US agents, so we think the Americans will help us and let us in.
This is the shrine of Lalish, the holiest site in the Yazidi faith. The Yazidis believe in reincarnation, and they revere an angel who takes the form of a peacock. But IS brand them as heretics who worship the devil. And inside we find the Qasim family tying knots in cloth. Each one a wish, they say, that their relatives, still held as prisoners by IS, will be set free safe. The Qasims too have applied for resettlement in America. As the religious leader here puts it, Yazidis are waiting for the wolf to come back and would prefer to die outside Iraq rather than here. But these women would not. They were held as sex slaves by IS. They were beaten and forced to convert to Islam before a people trafficker was paid for their freedom.
Many charities asked us to go to America, but we can't leave until we find out what happened to our men and children. They are all with Daesh now. We have no wish for any other country.
I am not trying to go abroad. I just want to see my family again. They took my little daughter, I don't know where. I don't know what they did with her, if they raped her or sold her. I don't know.
The stories in these camps take some telling. And if there is quiet dignity in the plight of many of these persecuted people, then consider this. What to them are arguments about border checks and delays in the name of national security compared with what they have endured so far? Jonathan Rugman, Channel 4 News, Northern Iraq.